We had one casualty. And one almost casualty. The plane I was looking after, one of the two planes I was looking after, was flying one day on a mission. The co-pilot got up out of a seat and went back to talk to some of the other guys that were with him. When they came back, there was a hole in the seat. Bullet, small bullet, high-powered rifle or something, and nailed the bucket he was supposed to be sitting in. And he was a lucky boy that time. He kind of had the shivers when he came back. He had to smooth out his seat before he could sit down.
Well, as a matter of fact, we won the Canadian Army Championship in England in 1941 and 42, which was softball, but not baseball. But
In England?
yeah. Yeah, we were pretty lucky. We were excused all that Army junk to play ball as long as we were winning. Jeez, drinking beer, chasing girls, and playing ball. And when you went overseas, which I spent most of my time overseas, you had to send home $20 a month or defer it. They would keep it for you till after the war. And you're getting $39 a month, so you're getting $19 a month to spend, and $20 was either kept for you or you sent it home, you know. But you didn't really need any money because there was lots of ways to make money in the Army, that's for sure. None of which were legitimate, but still.
But it was a common practice.
Yeah, right, everybody was doing it.
Irons, heated in the oven, wrapped up in old towels and put into your bed at night, or even a rock quite often. And very often we had a rock heated in the oven and wrapped up in old clothes, put into the cutter or the sleigh if we went to town. It gave off heat for a good long while. It kept your feet warm.
So you put a rock in the oven and...
Yeah, we'd put a rock in the oven. We had a foot warmer too. It had a charcoal coal that was heated in the stove, and when it was red, you put it out to put it in the little tray in the foot warmer and put it in, and you made sure that it got enough air so it could open the vent enough so it would burn very slowly, and it would keep warm for several hours and would keep your feet warm. In fact, one of ours is in the museum here at Cuba.
I had an experience at school one time when we were going to school. We had 2.5 mile trip to go to school in a country school, and we were going to Maryville School at the time, and we had a little pony with a cutter, and of course we'd take our blankets and cover up, but that didn't keep us too warm because it wasn't sealed. It was an open unit, and many times in the morning the roads were very poor, so the snow had piled up in big drifts and the horse would just jump in the snow. We had to unhook it many times and pull the sleigh ourselves, cut her through the snowbanks, and then hook it back up again. And that was something I'll never forget. Our legs used to get cold. It was a very hard time of life at that time. Very difficult times.
Oh, okay, go for the recess time and put it in the teacher's desk. I think we deserved every licking we got. There's no question about that. And some that we got away with.
I often walked home in my bare feet if it was wet and muddy. It was easier to clean muddy feet than muddy shoes. And besides, we had to take care of our shoes. Lunch pails were usually Rogers syrup pails or maple leaf lard pails because they had a handle on them. Duncreek School at the time was a one-room school, heated by a pot-belly heater in the winter. The floors were always cold, Sometimes the older boys trapped gophers. Gopher tails brought a penny apiece, if I remember correctly. This was one way of keeping them under control. Crow's eggs also brought a penny apiece.
The most exciting time was when they were paying a small amount of money for the gopher tails. And I remember the youngsters were just after those gophers, but I don't know, there were an awful lot of gophers in those days, you know. Because even when you caught 30 or 40 gophers, there was still a whole bunch of gophers around. Whereas later on the gopher population went down and there's hardly any gophers around now. But at that time that was unreal. There was gophers everywhere.
So you would get gopher tails.
Oh yeah, you take the gopher tails and you get, I don't know, 1 or 2 pennies a piece for the tails. And that was something, because we never had any money in those days. It was just money wasn't available. So 1 or 2 pennies looked like big money at that time.
I remember one incident coming home from school in the wintertime. Though there were only my sister and I, we often had 3 or 4 hitchhikers that were dropped off along the way. This particular day there had been a big snowstorm and the snowdrift had formed in the gateway. As we made the turn, the cutter upset and there were school bags, kids, lunch kits, blankets everywhere in the snow. I remember thinking it was so funny, I just laughed, and my sister was so cross at me. The horse ran away and left us in the snow. Fortunately, some farmer was coming along the way. He stopped our horse and brought her back to school, and we got home safe and sound.
Well, that's what we called it in those days. Nowadays it's First Nations, but then it was the Indian school. They used to get the Indian kids from the time they were about 6 years old till they were about 16, and teach them English. And at that time they figured 10 years they had that they'd be a part of the rest of us, they figured they wouldn't be Indians anymore, but I guess they didn't succeed, and I'm glad they didn't,
Yeah.
I look back, I think of people surviving on these prairies here, and the more I think of it, the more I appreciate those, I call them the Indian people, that they managed to survive in this awful climate with just the way they had their tents, and that was way back when, of course.
Had some good old days there. Our fairgrounds at that time had a full track all the way around, and the Indians would come from miles away, and they would have they had a tall on power poles where the judges would sit up on, and Allie Lynch and Shorty Corbett, and they were the main judges, and the track was a half a mile. And that was a big attraction on July the 1st. Usually there was hundreds and hundreds of people would come there, and they had ball games and whatnot, but the horse races was the big thing.
Pony races, Shetland pony races. I rode in some of them. I had a little bigger pony than most of them. It wasn't a pure Shetland, it was a cross of some sort. I don't know whether it was crossed with Welsh or what. But anyway, he was a little bigger and a little faster, so he always was handicapped at the start, the way behind, and he'd win the race anyhow. He was a horse that couldn't stand to be left behind. He had to be out in front. He knew a race when he saw one.
Now those were at the sports days?
Mm-hmm.